We got some free agency updates for the Toronto Blue Jays and sort of their plan on how this offseason is going to unfold. It's not Soto or bust like it was last season for the Ohtani sweepstakes, so we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And before we break down some of the new tidbits and news that came out here in the offseason, I want to let you know that a large percentage of you who are watching these videos are not subscribed to the channel. And even though you may not always agree with us, we're grinding. We're doing our best to keep you guys up to date on everything that you need to know, not only about the Blue Jays offseason, but about the offseason in general. We're starting the Soto watch here. It should be concluding within the next week or so. At least Nick and I are hoping so because we don't want to keep talking about the possibility of it happening and him coming to Toronto and then it not actually happening, and then we just rinse and repeat that same cycle that we went through last year. But yeah, hit that subscribe button. It'd mean the world to Nick and I because we're close to our goal of 15,000 subscribers, and hopefully we can get there by Christmas time, and only you guys can make that possible. But Nick, a lot of news to break down here, and it's exciting stuff because this offseason, this free agency class, a lot more to write home about when we're talking about the depth of the pool, of the talent pool that is. And it's not just Soto and then a bunch of Boilermakers that are following him. There's a list, a solid list of good names here that can bring a lot to the table, and the Blue Jays are going to be sorry if they don't walk away with at least one of these big names.
Yeah, Ben Nicholson Smith came out, revealed some very interesting details as well. Some interesting things on, like you mentioned, their plan and a Vladdy extension. A ton of things going down here. And it dropped a couple days ago. We also have some updated reports as well. But he went on and basically said, again, like we discussed in a video earlier, there's no credibility to the Soto Boston smoke. Nothing I've heard, all that we've kind of gone over. But I want to get your thoughts on the end of it here. So a Vlad extension is unlikely right now, maybe in the new year with market clarity. We had a video yesterday, of course, on Alex Bregman and his possibility to an opportunity to sign with the Blue Jays here. But the bottom part here, my read is they have a sense of what it would take to get something past the finish line. If they really need to hit the accelerator on that in February, they probably can. I don't think that the time they're going to do that is now, and that was on the Vladdy extension talks. And this has obviously serious impacts for how the Blue Jays will operate in the free agency pool. And I think it's encouraging because they know and they could get it done right now if they want to, which is annoying because, hey, just get it done. But I think they're waiting, and Vladdy may be waiting as well, to see what exactly the Blue Jays do this offseason. Again, there's tons of different names out there. We'll dive into them all here. And one just signed, late last night with the New York Mets. Not one of the huge names, but kind of gives you a gauge for the market for some of the lower tier guys, maybe to give some hint on what a Luis Severino contract will look like, which we'll dive into. But Peter, regarding a Vlad contract, the Jays have been patient, and we'll get into that in a second. It seems like they can get it done. They're just being patient on the sense of actually getting it done. And maybe, I'm going to take the optimistic route here, that's because they're waiting for bigger fish in this offseason, and then they go ahead and sign Vladdy after once they show him that they're committed to winning. That's the optimistic side.
Yeah, well, I'll take the pessimistic side and say, has 5 years of Vladdy not been enough time to think about a contract extension? We look around the league. Julio Rodriguez, after a handful of at-bats in the major leagues, after not even playing a full season, he signs a $200 million deal that can get up to $400 million with incentives. He's their franchise player. They committed to him. Let's go over to the Milwaukee Brewers. Jackson Chourio signed an $80 million deal over the course of 10 years, and he never even played a single inning in the majors. That's how confident they were in his abilities. Now, sure, Vladdy has underperformed at times and maybe not reached those lofty expectations that he set for himself in 2021 when he finished as the runner-up to Shohei Ohtani for the MVP award. But he's 25 years old. He has an amazing track record at the big league level, and some of your prospects that you're trying to sell to the fan base are older than Vladdy, and he's been in the league for 5 years now. So that doesn't really make much sense to me. Like, we're supposed to get excited about Joey Loperfido, who is older than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And that's what the fan base is trying to sell to us. No, no, no. Enough with that. And I know we've changed our tune on Vladdy, but we saw a lot of growth from him this season. We saw him really morph into the leader of this ball club, and that's what he has to be going forward. And I think he's really taken the bull by the horns. So sign him. You know what you have in Vladdy. Maybe he won't have as good of a season as he did last year, uh, but who like this is a franchise player, and maybe he's not a superstar to the level of some other guys, but he's a star player in his own right. He brings a level of marketability that no other player on the Blue Jays roster can bring to the team. So I think this is a no-brainer. I think it's more so Vladdy that is waiting to see uh, if he wants to stay here long term, waiting to see if they're going to build a team around him and remain competitive if he decides to sign up here for the long haul. So I think that's the issue here. It's not that the Jays don't want to keep him, it's that Vladdy is saying, okay, maybe the grass is going to be greener on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, and reading between the lines a little bit, you can see here again, they said they have an idea of what it would take to get past the finish line. If they really need to hit the accelerator on that, they can do it in February-ish. My guess is the Jays are at somewhere in the range of, late 200 millions into maybe 300 million, and Vladdy's looking for something like 350 million or something, 340 million, something of that nature, to where they haven't, because I mean, if they both wanted 300 million or Vlad was fine with that and the Jays were offering it, they would have got it done already. So I think there's a little bit of a discrepancy there right now, and Vladdy is holding out. And on the non-Soto free agency, because like you mentioned the hook there in the intro, it's interesting because you think about how the Jays can go from a contender or non-contender to a contender. It's interesting now because, like, unlike last season, you actually have other options, and the Jays have been a mix of patient and aggressive in the sense of behind the scenes and actually pursuing other opportunities. I do not think they're going to go out there and jump the market and sign Burns for 7 years, 210 in the next week. They have to go into January and do most of their shopping. Then they're okay with that. So it seems like out of all the guys they have, he also thinks that Fried and Santander are the two main Soto targets. I've been heavily on record saying that I think they're going to land Max Fried. I think that is the player they're going to get. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they get Fried and Santander. I could see an offseason where they get both those guys. We've had conversations. I think that would be fine. It's interesting in the sense of if they have to do their shopping in January, they'll be okay with that. I don't know if any of the big free agents are going to be available in January. We heard the winter meetings are going to be as busy as they have been ever. And that winter meeting starts in 6 days now, or depending when you're watching this in the time of recording. So like
Yeah.
December 6th. Soto's probably going to sign before December 6th. This week is when Soto is going to sign, in all likelihood. And as you look at some of the free agents that are available, Max Fried's projected to get 6 years, 130. We also saw Blake Snell's, blow the spot track projection out of the water by 60 or so million. So Max Fried might take 6 years, 170 million, 165 million. I asked you now, regarding Max Fried specifically, there's a lot of buzz going on around him. Is that an opportunity that the Jays should jump on? We've had brief conversations about it in the past, knowing what we've seen from some of these other contracts. 6 years, 160. If you're watching, let us know down below. Do you think that would be a solid piece? Because again, Ben Smith, he's mentioned it so many times. Fried, Santander. I think Fried is going to be a Toronto Blue Jay, and I think it's going to be 6 years. My prediction, maybe 150.
Well, yeah, I have no issues with that. And at the end of the day, I don't care. I don't care how much money they have to give out to these guys. You have to get the job done. You have to outspend other teams. You have the money. You have it at your disposal. Go out there and be a big player. And that's the tune that I've been singing all along. Maybe you don't want to go over some sort of tax threshold. Maybe you want to skimp on a few $1 million here and there, but this is not the time to penny pinch, not when there are jobs on the line. And I'm talking about Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, not when the common fan is starting to lose interest in your ball club. We were seeing empty ballparks towards the end of last season, Nick. That's a huge problem, and especially for Rogers, who owns the team, who owns the broadcasting rights. That is a big problem for them when people are not tuning in, when they're not turning on their TVs, when they're not showing up to the ballpark and spending $10 on a beer or getting a hot dog at the concession stand. That is a big issue right now. And how do you combat that? By spending money, by putting a competitive ball club on the field. And whether it's Max Fried, whether it's Santander, whether it's giving Vladdy an extra $50 million, I don't care what it is. You have to reverse this thing because last year just simply wasn't good enough. And maybe we've been a little bit spoiled with some of the regular seasons that we've seen, and we've gotten accustomed to getting this team into the playoffs and then being a very successful regular season team. but the tides are starting to shift here, and other teams are spending more money. They're trying to compete with the Dodgers. You have to do the same thing. That is your only chance.
Yep.
There's no other way you're going to be able to get to where you want to be if you're not playing the Dodgers game. This is not Moneyball. This is not some fairy tale story here. You got to spend in the modern day majors to get anything done and to win championships and to get to the playoffs. And if you don't do that, well, you're going to be in the basement, just like the Blue Jays were last season. And you don't want to live there because that's not a recipe for success financially.
Yeah, and as this week gets underway, it's going to be a very telling one. Jays want to add a starter of that caliber. We saw, I mean, Frankie Montas just signed a contract, 2 years, $34 million. He's coming off of a season with a near 5 ERA, and he's getting $34 million. So clearly, Steve Cohen, David Stearns, they see the upside there. He's been good in the past. And then you think of guys like super utility man. Jeff Passan loved to throw that term out there. I think he called Kevin Biggio a super utility man, but whatever.
I would just say utility man.
Yeah.
Nothing really super about him.
5 years, $74 million. He got paid, of course, a deferred contract. So action is starting to happen. The Jays need to go ahead and make these deals. They're going to have to overpay. You quickly look at Blake Snell. This obviously hasn't been updated yet, the website, but they projected a 5-year, 130. He obviously got, I think, 185?
180, 180,
Whatever it ended up
182, I
being.
think.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of money. 6 years, 180, or 5 years, 180. Max Fried, he's going to go for more. Corbin Burns would obviously be the big fish, but at the end of the day, the Jays need to go out there and they need to make a big move. And if they don't, we'll be sitting back here a year from now having a very similar conversation with a bit of a weaker free agency pool. But any final thoughts before we wrap up? It's going to be a very busy week of transactions. I think at least, hopefully, according to all reports, before winter meeting. Winter meetings are going to be the big one, but I think Soto is going to find a home, and maybe all that Red Sox buzz is going to be, maybe he's going to be a Boston Red Sox. If he's not a J, I hope he gets out of the AL East.
Yeah, well, if nothing changes, Nick, there's a serious problem. If no pieces get added to this team, I think we're gonna have a pretty long venting session on this channel in the form of a live stream, and I'm sure a lot of you will get your frustrations out. Maybe on me, maybe on Nick, and that's fine. But Nick, something has to change this offseason. Last year. I'm gonna say it was a blip on the radar. Let's just put it that way. Let's say a lot of things went wrong for the ball club. No excuses this time around. You have to get some deals done. You have to shake up this roster in whichever way that you can. And if we're sitting here a year from now and Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro made no changes and they're still employed, that is a serious issue. One that we'll have to dissect very, very deeply. If we fast forward a year from now and those guys are employed and the Blue Jays finish last place in the AL East yet again. So hopefully we're not singing that same tune. Hopefully things start to turn themselves around here and we see a more competitive team in 2025.
Yeah, we'll keep you up to date with all of it. We'll have streams going on as well. But in the meantime, something big is coming, and it may not be for the Toronto Blue Jays, but something big is coming around the MLB and Juan Soto. So buckle up. It's going to be a very busy week. And make sure to hit that subscribe button like Peter said. We're on the road to 15,000. We'll see you guys later.